So I want to welcome to the Greenbelt stage David Surman, who is the co-founder of Pacinko Pictures that explores notions of structure and representation in video games and animation. He also worked at Acme to help set up the Game Masters exhibition that explores 40 years of iconic games by celebrating the people behind them that brought them to life. So David, are there particular games that stand out in your own life as being meaningful or valuable to you personally?
So when I think back to my own experience of playing video games over the years, there are a handful of titles that really stand out to me.
Fumito Ueda's games, Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, someone who looks at the video game and sees completely different dynamics and different potentials in the medium to 99% of the other people working in the industry, with a sense of both its fullness and its potential, but also its emptiness. He sees that a game is a kind of an experience in which a player can get lost, a place in which a player can start with a set of assumptions and lose those assumptions or be challenged by those assumptions. There's a minimalism to his games. There's a kind of emptying out of the game, so that when he then puts things back in selectively, a character is introduced, or you turn a corner in a wilderness and suddenly there's this revelation of a place, an incredible grove or valley or something. When he puts something in, you really feel it. He doesn't start in the way that most games start, with a kind of overwhelming abundance, a kind of maximalism, too much stuff. He understands the need to take things out and create an austerity in order to then put things back in. He was inspired to make games through observing the work of Eric Chahi, who's a French designer. And Eric was famous for working on Another World, which is a classic game that was on the 16-bit Super Nintendo, Mega Drive, Amiga, and so on. And Eric Chahi's very chic, kind of like French comic book world vision of what a video game could be, a sort of slick, hard-boiled sci-fi world that he created in Another World. Ueda was inspired to tap into that quality that Chahi had really identified.
If we go back 20 years or so, there was a Sega console called the Sega Saturn, and one of those game series was a series known as Panzer Dragoon, and it's a series created by a Japanese designer called Yukio Futatsugi. It was the first game that I'd ever encountered that really explicitly created a world that wasn't just a simple sort of fantasy environment to get lost in, full of monsters and strange creatures and so on. It was also a world that was trying to say something, trying to talk about the human condition. It drew its aesthetic from the comic book art of the French artist Jean Giraud, also known as Moebius. The game really married this powerful aesthetic to a really interesting core design. It's one of the first games that seems to kind of use science fiction to create an ecological message. So the game deals with the idea of an ancient nature, a nature before the natural world of the present, that essentially comes back into the world and challenges the human element of that world, challenges it to acknowledge and consider the damage that it does to the world. And at the same time, it's a game that reflects on the power of the human being to do great damage to itself. It was a very, very interesting encounter, and it stayed with me.
That's great. Thanks for joining us at Greenbelt today, David.